Welcome everyone to Tiger Claw Radio. Oh my goodness. We're in Panzer Studios Part 2. Thank you for letting me take a surprise week off last week. Was not intended. But the time that has passed since has been quite exciting. I've been able to rip apart all of Panzer Studios, move it about 30 feet away to another room, which is about twice the size, wire up a lot of the video games, play some video games that I had not previously had access to because they were buried in a box or whatever. And in the 14 days since the last TCR, quite a lot has changed. All in a good way, all positive changes. I'm excited to dig in. Let's kick things off with a chiptune, and then we'll do some phone recording vancast type thing. I don't even know what to call them anymore. But let's check out some chiptunes. Stick around. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. All right, here we go. So this is from the Dungeon Synth 2E competition over at battlethebits.org, and I should pretext this with the Dungeon Synth competition. This is the second one they've done, and it's very different when it comes to chiptunes. This is more like, oh gosh, how would I classify this? I loved the first one as like background music for when you're going to play Dungeons and Dragons, but I can't imagine like a video game with a lot of that stuff. So I mean, it clearly not like NES era chiptune, but you could probably find something like this on like a Super Nintendo role-playing game. This particular track is from Ethereal, and it's called Moloch, and it was listed under. This was fifth place in the Dungeon Pants section of the Dungeon Synth competition. I love the artwork, by the way. They gave it a real Dungeons and Dragons artwork. You guys know I'm a big pen and paper role-playing guy. But anyway, here's the track. TCR, stick around. Check the description for a link to pick that track up from Battle of the Bits. You can get yourself a copy of the MP3. And if you want, leave a comment. Let them know that TCR sent you, because all of these artists, you know, they're not... I highly doubt these people are making a living off their music. There's a guarantee that this is a hobbyist who's just doing hobbyist things, and honestly, that's what I'm all about. So let's talk about some video games. So this past week, twice over, I was able to record a little bit with the changing times. One of the reasons I like doing that, prior to COVID, I used to call it the Vancast. It's basically just, off the cuff, right into my phone, and then I kind of piece it together on show day. And the reason I like it is because breaking things up like that gives me the chance to talk about things that are fresh in my mind. Instead of having to try to, fill in an hour all at once and running out of things to say. I was able to get some recording time while I was still actively up on video games, and in this particular moment, had a lot to say, and I was feeling really good. I think we did all right. So stick with us. So we're going to jump over to, I don't know, whenever this was. I think this was like 2 nights ago, and then we'll be back here in the studio. Do I still call this Panzer Studios because I've moved 30 feet away to a different room? Or is this now Panzer Studio 2? I don't know. Stick around. All right, we are recording via cell phone tonight. We're going to do a little bit for TCR. What's going on, everyone? This is as close as we come to a Vancast these days, and we're a year out, so that term is kind of a lost term here on TCR. But let's talk about video games for a minute. First video game that comes to mind this past week is a perennial favorite for me and for here on the show. River City Ransom for the NES, a game I've loved as a kid. As a matter of fact, my copy of River City Ransom is the first video game I've ever owned myself. Not the first video game I ever played, not the first video game we ever had in the house, but it was the first one that was ever mine. You gotta remember, I was the youngest of 5 kids, so we had a lot of video games that just belonged to my brothers or ours in general or whatever. But this was the first game that belonged to Alex. It was old CF. That's who owned River City Ransom. Anyway, I won't get into the nitty gritty of the general Wikipedia reading of what it is. But let's get more to my experience with the game and why I bring it up today. It's always been one of my favorites. When I was a kid, I used to draw little cartoons for the, starring the little guys, and whatnot. It's a good game. And every couple of years or so, I dust it off and just shotgun right through it. It's just, and it's never like planned. It's never like, this particular time every year. That's when I play through River City Ransom. It's just something that comes about because it's such a good game. It's fun to play, and playing through it is pretty quick, so you can beat the entire game pretty quickly. I have a full playthrough on my old YouTube channel where I think like 30 minutes or so I played through the game, something like that. But anyway, I dusted it off again and I started playing through it just this past week. And I was sitting in my office, and 2 of my kids were with me. They were watching. And the thing that made this particular run special, I've tried to do this a couple times, but with limited success, is I tried to shotgun right through it. Now, if it's been a while since you played River City Ransom, just a quick recap. Yes, it's a side-scrolling beat-em-up, a lot like Double Dragon and the like, but it's got some RPG growth elements. I usually like to tell people in a joking way, River City Ransom is the game where you beat people up, take their money, and go shopping with it. Because that's really what you do. I mean, you're going to buy food items to increase your statistics and make you better at fighting. And then as you get to the end of the game, the gangsters, the gang members that you're fighting get a little harder. So you have to be growing with the curve, so to speak. So when I played it, I tried to just shotgun through it. I didn't do any grinding. I just went to the first boss, went to the second boss, went to I think the third boss is the one you have to backtrack for. Can't remember if it's third or fourth, to be honest with you. But I made it all the way to the twins at the end of the game with very little statistical growth. I had a little bit just because I wasn't dying on purpose at all in the game. So there were a couple of times where it's like I just go buy something to try and get my health back up, and then you gained 1 kick point or something like that. I don't know. So here's the ultimate end of the story. As I got to the twins, And I played the Twins over and over again and could not get any traction with the Twins. This is ridiculous, man. I remember having a discussion with my good buddy Angie. Like when we were, I want to say kids, but we weren't like little kids. We were probably like high schoolers or something like that. And I remember him saying, you can beat that whole game with just the Dragon's Feet technique. That's the one where when you press the kick button, you do 3 quick kicks instead of just 1. So that's what I did. I bought the Dragon Feet technique. Press the kick button once, you get 3 quick kicks. And for the most part, it worked. I was able to play through the better part of the game, like usual. But the Twins at the end, man, they can get up from the ground. When you knock them down, they can get up into a spin kick attack, whereas every other enemy in the entire game, when they're down, they have to get up, then attack. So if you're quick about it, you can stop them from getting back on their feet. Yeah, the Twins just wiped the floor with me, which was, I don't know, it's kind of weird, because, like, I don't know if weird is the right word, but it kind of draws attention to how just games are different now, because you could play that, you could save scum that. I was playing it on RetroArch on Steam, but I do have the actual game, so I could have save scummed it pretty easily, but I did it pretty legit. Every time you get killed, man, you go right back to the mall, you lose half your cash, and you got to dart back there again. And yeah, it's pretty frustrating. But what a great game. I saved my guy, but I never made it past the Twins this past run through, which is, I don't know, it's a bit of a disappointment, I guess. But yeah, River City Ransom is one of my all-time favorites. I'd say it's number 3. All-time favorite video games is a list that I had locked and loaded for a long time. I used to tell people that it was a tie between River City Ransom and Wizardry 5 for the Super Nintendo. And then in later years, I felt both of those were eclipsed by the original Quake. So 1, 2, and 3 spots are Quake, River City Ransom, and Wizardry 5. For my 3 favorite games of all time, of all video games. Yeah, I would say that's still true. Still a great game. A lot of different versions of it you can play now. That wasn't the case when I was a kid, when I got hooked on it. You know, when I was drawing little cartoons of the River City Ransom guys, there was no Scott Pilgrim versus the World back then. Yeah, it is cool. And it's kind of a, how shall I put this? I don't know, you ever like make something up as a kid and then it comes into fruition later? Well, we used to mod that game in Nesticle, which is the thriving NES emulator that was popular in the late 90s. I was going to say early 2000s, but yeah, I guess it would be late 90s. And I was working on River City Remix, which is basically just like I changed some of the hairstyles and some of the text and whatnot. And my buddy Angie made a ROM hack called River City Girls, which was pretty well done, but unfortunately lost in the sands of time, where he palette swapped all of the ladies who walk around in the mall with all of the gangbangers, and had to redraw some of the punching animation and kicking animations. But that was essentially it, and he put a lot of work on it, because again, if you've never used Nesticle before, you basically have your palette of partial NES sprites. And I think River City Ransom characters are made up of, I can't remember if it's 6 or 8, but they're 6 or 8 Nintendo tiles. Think of like Super Mario when he's small as made up of 4 tiles, right? Like a little 2x2 square. Yeah, then the River City Ransom characters are like 2x3 or 2x4, but when you're looking at the palette of sprites, those sprites that make up that character are not next to each other. Now, modern day ROM hacking tools, you can pluck them out and put them next to each other so that you can edit them in a logical sense. He didn't have that. So we're talking about an endless an unfathomable amount of trial and error to change the graphics on these River City Ransom sprites. And this was on a computer that connected to the internet through AOL. So we didn't really have like cloud storage back then. And I guess he didn't own like a big box of discs. He wasn't like an obsessive backup type person. So when that computer came crashing down, River City Girls, the late 90s edition, was lost along with a lot of other stuff. River City Girls was one, and then also a lot of click and play games. The original Colteca for one, back on RPG Maker 95, which I never saw, and then in click and play. A lot of that stuff just went up in smoke when that computer went under. Yeah, so all those memories just kind of came rushing back, shotgunning through River City Ransom real quick. So that story of River City Ransom leads me to a post that I wanted to go over here on the air. Now, I did this the last show where it was like, it was sort of like a fake version of the fail bag, the old school fail bag that I did back when TCR first started. So this is not really, this is something that was written into the show, but we'll read it like it is. Hey gang, finally got an NES today after my mom sold my old one at a garage sale 18 years ago. I got Super Mario Bros. 1, 3, and Zelda 1. What are some good NES gems / essentials that I should keep on my list going forward? I really want Kirby's Adventure and the Mega Man games. I love this post. I love this post because there's so much optimism here. This is a guy who's got his Nintendo. He knows the library pretty well because he used to have one. And he's doing all the things. You know, he's not just talking about getting his old Nintendo one day. He's got it. It's pretty great. He's got a picture of, you can see Super Mario Bros. 3 running on a Nintendo with the front part open, and it's next to a CRT monitor, like a CRT old kind of tube television. What kind of TV is this? This is a JVC TV with the two little speakers in front built into it. Yeah, it's pretty neat. So there's a lot of responses to this, and very, very quickly it devolves into an argument over emulation. Basically, the very first thing someone says to him is, you should just get a flash card and load everything you want on it. And his response is, I like collecting the old games, though. Yeah, so let's assume that emulation is off the table for this guy, because he makes the point that he wants to collect the old games. Well, I gotta say, I mean, the first gem that's on my list that I feel like should be on everybody's radar, if you're collecting for the NES, is River City Ransom. Now, it's not a cheap game, but it's not absurdly expensive either. It's been a long time since I looked it up, but it can't be more than like $20, $25. Let me see here. Let's head over to eBay. Probably more these days. River City Ransom. Let's try it. Yeah, $22.50 with $5 shipping. That's 5 bids on it. $40 buying now, but who buys that? $50 buying now. $35. $35, $40. Yeah, I guess it's pretty expensive. What a game, though. Oh my gosh. Yeah, River City Ransom is a good pick, but what are some other good picks apart from River City Ransom and apart from what he's listed here? Well, he says he has Mario Brothers 1 and 3. So, what do you think about Mario Brothers 2? Despite the popularity of hating that game for some ridiculous reason, I've always enjoyed it. But here's another one that I might even venture to say I've enjoyed more, at least in my adult life, is Mario Brothers, the arcade game. Pre-Super Mario Brothers, Mario Brothers. There's a really good port of that on the NES, actually. And when I was the last time I was looking at purchasing NES games, I wasn't looking for myself, but rather for a member of the family. And I looked up the arcade version of Mario Brothers, thinking it would be a lesser game than like Super Mario Brothers 3 or something. And that was like $25, and that kind of shocked me. We got Zelda. That's another one that people are split on, is Zelda 2. I'm trying to think of like the essential games that are not like crazy expensive. Because like, of course, there's Contra also, but that's one that has just gone through the roof in price to the point where it's like there is no point now. Just, I don't know, you're better off buying Super Contra or get on AliExpress and buy Contra Revenge of the Red Falcon just because it's cheaper. I always like Rollerball. I thought that's a good game. I don't know if I'd call that a must-have because it's a pinball game and you kind of have to be into pinball, but that is a really good game. I don't know. Those are just a few. So it was really cool to read about somebody having some genuine enthusiasm about the NES and looking for games to play, as opposed to just being jaded and talking about how everything's the same and nothing's fun anymore. All right, I think that's all I got for now. Back to the studio. See you there. Back again in the studio. We're going to listen to some more chiptunes, but I just want to take a quick minute to thank the sponsors. This is a Patreon-sponsored program. These individuals, gentlemen, are saints. I used to offer them early access to the show because now I struggle to keep up and get it out on time, so I will return to that as soon as COVID is over. Right now I offer, I can read their names off in a Hall of Distinguished Gentlemen, kind of a Hall of Fame, so you know the reasons why TCR keeps coming back, despite families exploding all over the place. They are Hemrock, EmeraldRangers.com, Tecmo Balls, Darabka, and Eric Controller. Thank you guys so much for keeping the lights on. Thanks for letting me take a forced week off that just kind of came out of nowhere. And since I can't offer early access to the show, I'll do what I can to get some more Patreon content up there. Maybe we'll do. Like, I've been promising for weeks that we're gonna do like some chiptune jams or something like that. I'll find a way to make it work this week now that I'm in the new office. It's one of the things I like about this place is there's a lot more space for me to experiment. I've got space now. Like with all the extra wall space, I set up tables. They're all lined with like tables that I can set up equipment on. So one of the things I'd like to do is, since I like to do music content, maybe do some stuff with my vinyl collection or something like that. You know, nearly 10 years ago now, my goodness, I ran a little podcast called Reels of Fury, and it only lasted like 3 episodes, but basically it was a music podcast that was all fueled by cassette. Everything you were hearing was from my personal cassette collection. There was no cassette revival at the time, so there was nothing else like it on the internet. I would love to do something like that again, but cassettes, and again, this is one of the reasons why they're not popular, one of the many reasons, very space intensive. So I don't know, that sounds like a thing that would be fun, but I also have a lot of projects that I'm working on right now, but we'll find some way to have a good time with it. All right, back here in the studio, let's listen to another chiptune. Here's another perennial favorite of mine. I wouldn't say a favorite of everyone's, but it's a favorite of mine. This is Coleco Music, and the name of the track is Coleco Says How Are You. It's still a free album. You get this off of 8-Bit Peoples, which was the site that got me into chiptunes even before 8-Bit Collective, and they still offer everything for free. But nowadays they have like a cart system. You have to set up an account. You have to add the album to your cart. You have to finish a purchase for $0. They send a key to your email, and then you get the album. That isn't how it was when TCR started. You could go to 8-Bit Peoples in those days and just like middle click every album that looked good, and then go through each tab and just download. Thankfully, I still have a folder of a bunch of those albums, and Coleco Music is one of them. It's a short EP that's got, how many tracks are on it? Is it 5 or 6? Six tracks. And this particular one sticks out because I've seen it in as the ending credits to a web series somewhere, but I can't remember where. If you happen to remember, let me know in the comments. I like it. I'll leave a link to where you can get the album. It's Coleco Says How Are You?
Can I meet you Italy, right? Fully chosen for you. She said I'm into you. I talked to you last night. Can I meet you Italy, right?
Okay, when I fished out links for that track, I found two separate links that are going to be in the comments or in the description. One is a direct link to just that track because they have it on the free music archive, which I think you can download without signing up for anything. It's just a straight download if you just want that track. The second link is to the 8-Bit People's listing for the album, where you can get the entire album for free, but you do have to go through that whole rigmarole. Both of those are in the description if you want to poke around. Yeah, so let's see. I got one more from the... we'll still call it a Vancast just because I don't want to come up with another term on the fly. I got one more for the week, and then we'll see what else is happening. Let's go there now. Here's another quick one for you. I guess we could bring this back around to the NES, but I was looking just today at cheap... Android TV boxes. Now, most of you out there have been with the show for a good amount of time. Remember that way back when the Ouya came out, I was a big fan of the Ouya. One of the few people, as a matter of fact, that were. We didn't have any Raspberry Pi at the time. Cell phones were prevalent, and they already had ROMs and emulators and all that stuff, but controllers were around, but not as plentiful as they are now. I got into the Ouya being, cheap games, emulation, all that stuff. Well, that system has long since died and gone and been replaced with Raspberry Pis. Then I discovered there are these Android machines, which are essentially the same thing, just an Android-based box that you plug into your TV and has USB ports, and they're much cheaper than the Ouya was as well. So I started looking at them and saying, okay, well, what exactly do we have here? What can these things do? How much do they cost? And whatnot. I kicked around the idea a little bit. The cheapest ones, the ones I was actually looking at getting, are essentially like hack devices that are running mobile software on them, which, depending on what you want to do, might be really cool and it might be really awful. So I think most people buy these things intending for them to be like their streaming TV devices, like run Netflix off and things like that. And since a lot of the cheap Android TV boxes are essentially, pirate hardware, they try and install Netflix and it gives them problems. And then they look at the UI and it's not clean and there's issues with it. So for most people, it turns out these devices are like a bad idea. But in my case, you're just getting a box that has a USB port and you're just trying to put a good solid NES emulator on it so you can play ice hockey and duct tape that thing to the back of the TV set so there's no need for any, box or anything like that. I don't know. I didn't end up picking one up, but it held my interest long enough for the day that I looked at several of these and just to see what they were. And I think the top end Android box is the NVIDIA Shield Pro, which is essentially the same thing, but it comes with a nice, solid looking controller, and as opposed to being like a hack box, this one's got like some official support, and it's a licensed machine. And I figured, okay, well, it's Ouya 2.0. Well, they're $200 now. See, the big thing about the Ouya at the time was it was $100. It was the cheapest console there was. Even $100 isn't going to cut it now that you can get a Raspberry Pi or whatever, or better yet, just hook your phone up directly to the TV and play off of that. I don't know, but I was interested. Part of me, just for science, wants to get one of these really cheap boxes just to mess with it, to see what it can do. Like I can't imagine it would become a staple machine for me. But I do kind of want to mess with one and see what I can make happen. In messing with my hardware here at home that I have available to me, I was messing around on my phone and popped open an emulator, and I came across a game that I used to play quite a lot when I was little, but not so much in adulthood. Goonies 2 for the NES, classic game. Weird story. There was a Goonies 1. But it never made consoles in America. Last time I looked this up, and it's been a number of years, so please correct me if I'm wrong. It did make it to the States, but only in the Play Choice 10. Is that right? Anyways, Goonies 2, classic game when we were kids, but we never heard of any Goonies 1 until we got older and the internet and emulation and whatever came around. I opened up Goonies 2, and it's funny because this is a game that people like to crap on. When I watch these young guys standing in front of a big wall of NES games talking about everything they read on Wikipedia and whatnot. It's a game that is largely looked at as negatively, but I thought Goonies 2 was awesome when I was a kid. I thought the music was great. It was like a great early example of chiptunes, like Nintendo music being good just for the music's sake, or at least in terms of what I was exposed to. Heck, part of the introduction to this show for many, many years was the VG Music version. I can't remember if it was VG Music or if it was one that was posted on 8-Bit Collective, but it was part of that song, Goonies Are Good Enough, from Cyndi Lauper, that plays in the game. Yeah, it's a good game, man. I don't care. I know that it's weird. I know that it culminates with you trying to save a mermaid, and there's no good reason for it to be a mermaid, and it doesn't really say it anywhere in the game, unless I think if you read the manual it says it. But the graphics were cool. It was a very colorful game. It was open-ended, like exploration. The term we now use to talk about this sort of thing is Metroidvania. I still hate that term, but that's what it was. A very long, non-linear side-scrolling adventure game where you would seek items, and acquiring items would then give you access to more areas. It had a lot of backtracking, which people these days don't seem to like. I mean, okay, let me change that. We have a lot of backtracking, which sucks. I'm just going to come out and say it. It sucks. But for whatever reason at the time, it didn't really bother me. Don't know why, to be perfectly honest. I don't know. Weird game, Goonies 2. That's one that I would like to revisit all the way to the end. But yeah, don't listen to the reviewers. It's good. Never played. Well, that's not fair to say I never played, but I never really did the deep dive on the original game. I mean, it's out there now that we have full access to emulation and stuff, and you can get on AliExpress and order yourself a cartridge of the original game to play on the NES as well. But I don't know, and I'm told it's a good game too. I tried it early on in the emulation days when it was around, like when I first realized, hey, this is a game you can download and play, that we don't have access to otherwise. I tried it then, but I didn't get hooked. I don't know. I think it was just because I remember thinking there are doors everywhere, but you can't get in there unless you have a bomb, as opposed to Goonies 2, where every door you can go into, and the vast majority of them will take you to another place that's themed differently and colored differently. I don't know. Maybe I just didn't have the patience for it at the time, even as a young man of like 18 years old, or however old I was when I first played that game. Probably even younger than that. So that's it. This Android hardware mess brought me back to the NES yet again. So I guess this week my big picks have been River City Ransom and The Goonies 2, both worthwhile games. I don't know if I would include The Goonies 2 on a list of must-haves, like for this guy I talked about in the last bit, where he wanted to know the good games are worth obtaining. Because there's a lot of games that I think are better, or at least, I would say, have a more universal appeal, right? Like I'm fully willing to admit that part of the reason why I like this game is probably just because I played it when I was young and impressionable, and was willing to overlook things that, people understandably don't overlook now, like kind of janky controls. The controls weren't that bad. Sometimes the jumping mechanics were a little floaty, not really having any sense of direction as to where to go, having to use like the punch and hammer mechanics on every wall in every room to make sure you're not missing any secret items. Lack of a cohesive map. I mean, there is a map in the game, but young version of CF could not make heads or tails of it. Yeah, I don't know. But none of that mattered when I was a kid, because it was a good game. Whatever. Sip of tea for Goonies 2. Good game. I'm hoping to dig back into that this afternoon. We'll see. So let's do this. Hemrock, with his email, sent over some chiptunes. I'm going to play one of the chiptunes from his track before we head over to the fail bag. That way, when we read through his email, I think there'll be some reference. It'll make sense. And his chiptunes, the ones that he picks out, are always really good. So let's see what we have. And I'll read off artist and track name once we're through. Stick around. You're listening to TCR. That's Paperman Stage from KGB 525 over at Battle of the Bits from the Winter Chip 16. So let's see what Hemrock has to say. This is a 9-day-old email because it was written for the last show that we put up, so bear with me as we go back in time just a wee bit. He says, hey, Paisan, thank you as usual for another episode. I really appreciate the return to the old fail bag. I think it was a great idea if you're low on content. Speaking of great things, I'm happy to see TCR is picked up on EmeraldRangers.com. Way to go. Yes, thank you for that. And also big thanks to Sendu for letting me slide for a week. And he shoots me a Google Drive link. He says, unfortunately, a lot of the ones I liked did not score high overall. It's a shame when 3 of the top 7 entries are album art. Granted, there's some fantastic album art entries. I simply wish that there was a separate category completely. In any case, Winter Chip saw a return of Rush Jet 1. I also found an artist named Mr. Minister Master, who is putting out some very groovy tracks. I also give an honorable mention to Majesty 14. Of course, my favorites include the usual suspects, Galgox, Tobakomi, and Cleater, and of course, the immortal KGB 525. Galgox is probably my favorite overall artist in the current competition. Do yourself a favor and listen to the tune entitled Curious Cloud. How did this rank down to number 63? What are your thoughts on the competition? All right, so let's address this before we read the rest of the email. What you're talking about in terms of Battle of the Bits, I think, is one of my something I noticed with this site. There's great content that gets put out on Battle of the Bits, okay, and for that, it's a worthwhile site. They tend to favor, and I don't know if this is the people who run the site or if it's just the general audience. They tend to favor music that's different from what I like, which is okay. But because of that, I don't submit to the site, because if I put out the best kind of music that I wanted to make, it would still be rated low, because it's not the kind of music that gets rated highly over there. However, good chiptunes like that still come out, so good site, just not exactly the chiptune cultural hub that I wish it was, I guess. I'm liking the fact that we are now digging through the entries ourselves, as opposed to just grabbing the the curated Bandcamp releases, which is what I used to do over there. So, it is what it is. It's cool. Let's get back to the email. I'm not sure why that MIDI file from the last week didn't work on Audacity. Was there not an MP3 option on the download on Battle of the Bits? Okay, that one I want to address right away. There is a download option. I tried it a million times from several different browsers. For whatever reason, it's corrupted. I don't know why. That track actually is the number one track. If you go back and look at the results now that the voting period is over, that's the number one. And I looked at it again this morning. I still couldn't download the track. It'll let me download the MIDI, so in theory I could run that through some sort of conversion program and make it work, but I just wasn't going to go through all that. So, I tried. I put it into Audacity and it would play, but when I tried to generate the MP3 at the end of the show, it just caused problems. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. Back to the email. Sorry to hear that your friend Paul's board game didn't quite make it. I hope he's able to collect his thoughts and get the game off the ground. Yeah, it's a good game. We'll see what happens with it. I remember years ago you discussing your plans to give your son your Sega Genesis. I'm sad he doesn't appreciate it. Well, like you said, at least he's honest. What type of gaming is your son into at the moment? Does he still play Magic the Gathering? Actually, he created a Magic the Gathering deck like 2 nights ago, and has been asking me to have a face-off where he can test it. And I would love to do that, but I've just been too busy, unfortunately. So we took a big break from Magic the Gathering in our house. I stopped kind of pushing the issue because I was playing it with little kids, so I wasn't really allowed to win, because if I would make a nice deck that cleaned house, then everyone would get frustrated and not want to play, which I guess is true no matter who you're playing with. So at first I limited myself to only Pauper, and I let the kids use whatever they wanted. And I tried to help the kids build their own, quality decks and stuff, and it just, I don't know. It didn't seem to be something they were enjoying, so we took a big break from it. And then my son built his deck almost out of the blue, actually completely out of the blue. So I want to have this face-off with him and see how it goes, because he is pretty confident that it had some metal behind it. He was like, "Dad, you don't have to hold back on this one." So we'll see how that goes. As far as what gaming he's into in the moment, he bounces around. He generally likes games where he can be creative, games that have level designers. He's interested in getting a Switch, but I just don't see that happening in our house for a while. Really wants a Switch. He's interested. His favorite game, or the game that he's most excited about, is Mario Maker 2. So he likes Level Head on Steam because that's a lot like it. Uh, he plays a lot of Minecraft. He plays a lot of Terraria. And then there's a couple really simple puzzle games that he plays on top of that. I think this past weekend he was playing a game called Draw Rider, which is almost just like Excite Bike for the NES, except it's all black and white and you can just draw the courses with a pen. It's a pretty fun game, but pretty small. Alright, what else do we have? You spoke about series that have 4 or more good games. Here's a few suggestions. Final Fantasy, as you rightfully mentioned, Civilization, Elder Scrolls, Donkey Kong Country, if you include Diddy Kong Racing, Super Smash Bros., Super Mario Kart, Fire Emblem, Shining Force, 1, 2, 2, and CD. I guess that's supposed to be 1, 2, and 3 CD. The only reason why I didn't correct it when I read it was because I don't know a ton about the Shining Force series. Oh, when it comes to Shining Force, I believe you could also include Shining in the Holy Ark and Shining in the Darkness. Those are from that series too, aren't they? And Shining in the Darkness is a good game because I like dungeon crawlers, and that's a pretty well done one. Panzer Dragoon, 1, 2, Saga and Orta, and Warcraft, 1, 2, 3, and WoW. Yeah, okay, you got some good series in there. I could needle at you and nitpick this in a couple of ways. Like, Civilization sticks out to me as a weird example because a lot of those entries are really similar. So when Civilization comes out now, it almost feels like a Madden game, but that's an exaggeration because Madden is every year and Civilization is like once every, 5 or 6 years. I don't know. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe that absolutely does count. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. You got some good examples there. Good examples indeed. Here's a question for you, CF. I've been noticing a bit of a craze for these retro-inspired handheld emulation devices on the YouTubers. Do you have any interest in these things? For reference, here's an article. Let's pop up in the article and take a look. I did. 27 best retro handhelds. Which emulator should you buy? I did when the gyms were open. I really wanted to get something like this for my gym bag so that I could play it while my kids got their exercise out. I would go and do my run, and do my thing, and then get a shower, and then chill out and play a handheld for I don't know. Usually ended up being 15 minutes or something, not a long time, but something that could fit nicely in my gym bag that was low cost. There's some pretty cool looking devices here, I'm not gonna lie, but am I realistically gonna buy one? Probably not. It would definitely not be a high-end thing if I did. Pocket Go S30 at $60. Okay, see, yeah, it's not so bad. $100 is too much for me. I don't think $100 is an unreasonable price for a good solid handheld clone, but it's more than I would want to pay. Yeah, I don't know. The ones in this article that are listed here, Odroid Go Advance, look nicer than what I saw when I last went around trying to find a good one. Odroid Go Advance is $55. Fun to build. I don't know. I wasn't, but this might change my mind. We'll see. I am going to pin that article. I'll check it out. Here's some retro news. The Blizzard Arcade Collection has been announced. Also, the Game Boy games Amazing Penguin and Spanky's Quest are being re-released by Limited Run Games. Alright, so let's start with the Blizzard Arcade Collection. Not 100% sure what that is, so let's pop the article open and take a look. Relive the Legacy, announcing the Blizzard Arcade Collection. All faithfully reproduced on modern platforms in the Blizzard Arcade Collection. Battle.net PC, Nintendo Switch. Okay, yeah. What's actually in it? The Lost Vikings, Rock and Roll Racing, Blackthorn. Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know. None of those games stick in my side as immediate checkout games, but doesn't mean I wouldn't check it out. I don't know. I'll have to watch the trailer. Blizzard really, for me, there's only a handful of Blizzard games that I really got into, and they were basically, the usual suspects. The early CD era Blizzard I liked. I liked Warcraft 2, and I liked Diablo 1. And Diablo 2 was okay, but I didn't get to play it much. And that's pretty much it. I played World of Warcraft for a little while, but that one, I am, and much to the dismay of several of you I know, because I know a couple of people who listen to this, including you, Hemrock, were into World of Warcraft at some point. I don't know. I played it for a while when somebody was paying for it for me, but I could not reconcile the idea of paying a service charge for a video game at that time. And the other thing you talked about was 2 Game Boy games being re-released. Amazing Penguin and Spanky's Quest. So let's pop these open. Amazing Penguin for the Game Boy, $34.99. Limited run. Actually, that's not bad at all for a newly manufactured game. Same for Spanky's Quest Game Boy. $34.99. I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot, but it's not a lot. It seems like a lot because I've been spoiled by the emulation generation. I don't know. They look nice. We'll see. I'm waffling about it in my head, so we'll have to see. Let's see. Do you think Tigerfest is in the cards for 2021? Are you still thinking of hosting it somewhere around Morgantown, West Virginia? I believe that small city has both an IHOP and a Cracker Barrel. Any progress on the retro junk box? Well, I'm rooting for you. Keep rolling retro. Bring back Monday Night Morrowind and rip Suikoden review. Alright, a couple things to address here. I'm not sure when Tigerfest is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be 2021 or not, because this is something I've noticed is that I am, I think, way more nervous about going out and mixing with people than other people are, I think, at this point. Like, to give you an example, the Scouts are meeting in person and stuff, and that kind of freaks me out a little bit. So I don't know. I have a feeling it might be like 2022, just to be perfectly honest with you. I want everyone to get vaccinated. I want it to be safe to go out first. I couldn't do anything that would put me at risk of bringing something back home and sharing it with my family and getting them sick. So I don't know. I wouldn't even begin to start setting dates until we knew it was safe. Put it that way. As far as where the town is, Morgantown, West Virginia sounds great. I'm not solidified on any one particular place. Just as long as it's a place we could all get to that worked. Morgantown sounds great. West Virginia is a beautiful state. I don't know anything about Morgantown offhand, but I would look it up. I would drive there. It's only a few hours away or whatever. As far as the retro junk box is concerned, I have it here. I showed it to my father-in-law just this past week, actually, saying, "Look, this is what we have. This is the plan. Is there anything do you want to take part in it?" Because my father-in-law is not like a traditional gamer, but he was around in like the Apple II days and really early days of computing. So if he were to have jumped in it, anything I think he would have put in the box would have been gold. So it's unfortunate that he didn't find any keepers. Now that I'm settled in, let's work on getting that out the door. Let me take a note here, because that's really what stops it from getting done, is the fact that I close up the retro junk box. I close up the show, and then once I get the show online, a lot of this stuff just goes out of my head and doesn't come back until it's time to do the show again. And thus we run into this big cycle of things getting shoved aside. I want to get this thing out the door, because I've took my things out of it, and I've put my things into it. I feel like I found some really good things to put into it. Desm, I still have your info, so it has another stop to make it to. I just need to get to the post office, and I've been nervous about that. But I think I can make it work. I think I can do it now. It's been long enough. It has been long enough that we can make this happen. And that is the email. Always good to hear from you, brother. Hope you're doing well. Hope your family's safe. Hope everything's going well. Let's jump over to YouTube and see what the comments are for the last episode. Not much in the way of YouTube comments over the past 2 weeks. We've only got one on the actual episode. So let's see what else has been scattered around the YouTube channel in the meantime. I got one on Menu Works, which is an old DOS program from 1987. I did a video about a while ago. I've been always pretty proud of that one because my dad used to use that on our computer before Windows. And the actual developer of that program came and left a comment, which is pretty awesome. But this one's from Christopher Knoll, who says, I like Point and Shoot by Vartech Inc. I haven't noticed any Y2K problems with it. I think that it has that name because it can respond to mouse input as well as keyboard. My uncle installed it in the 90s. I don't know if it ever had a physical format. While we initially used Vendex Head Start shell, we eventually relied on Point and Shoot for the software we used most often. Let me know if you ever find a copy of Head Start shell. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I always like hearing what people did pre-Windows, back when you would sit down at a computer and you turned it on, and whatever the interface was, assuming you had an interface and not just a command prompt, it was always different for everybody, just because that's how computers were. How we doing? Does that sound any better? Double Dragon Full Hearts trick on NES. Tom Waters says this is classified information. This was in the classified information section, the cheat code section of Nintendo Power back in the day. That's how I first learned about it. I just came to watch your video so I could give it to somebody because it's a lot easier to show them a video than explain it. Yeah, okay, cool. Let's see. A couple well-wishers on me letting people know I was going to be out last week. But the 2D Gamer responds to my Cathedral 3 video saying it's Techno's Deception meets Quake. Yeah, okay. I guess that's a pretty good description. But very very fast pace. I don't remember Techno's Deception being fast paced, but it's been many, many years since I've experienced that game. Ricky Cat leaves one on Tiger Electronics handheld video. He says, Paperboy is my first and favorite Tiger game. When you lose all your lives in the first game, there should be a fence near the house. I don't know why, but it doesn't appear. But trust me, that's why you crash. That's funny. So I guess there was a dead pixel on that old Tiger Electronics game that I had. Oh well, sold it now. Pepe Pelon leaves one on the Ski Free video saying, I remember that game. Yeah, Ski Free was an awesome game back in the day. All right, and here we go. Mecha Menace chiming in on our last TCR, number 376. He says, I hated that first track. I don't believe the composer knew what they wanted. Each section was well composed. However, juxtaposed, it sounds like a kitchen sink thrown at a composer's head, and then it was thrown into the composition of compositions. Garbage, and they didn't accept any of your submissions, maybe because I'm overworked and stressed, but I was so irritated listening to that. I did not know Audacity had MIDI importing and editing capabilities. I'll have to check that out. What program do you use to edit MIDI? Okay, to answer that last question, and there is a little bit more here. The only editing of MIDI I ever do is in LMMS, which is a free DAW, and Raptor. Is it Raptor? No, it's Reaper, which is also a free DAW. Only those two. And I'm fully aware there's better ways to do it. But let's get back to the comment. He says, in your hypothetical Q&A, you mentioned Quake's aesthetics aligned with the first game in your mind. Quake 2 has always been how I saw the series, since later games used that as their basis. It's a very industrial look. Large cement structures like dam, factories, conveyor belts, pipes, metal fused with organic and chunks of flesh. I wonder if H.R. Giger could inspire any future iterations of the series. Yeah, I could see that. They drifted away from that aesthetic from the first Quake, immediately after the first Quake. You're right about that. But I guess the question was more if they were trying to remake the first Quake. So you're saying that if they went back to the first Quake and tried to make a modernized version, it would look more like Quake 2 and beyond? And I think that's what fans of the original Quake are afraid of. Because that first Quake had something that just was absent from the rest of the games. I don't know. All right. Let's see. How we doing? Mecha Menace, thanks for writing in, brother. It's good to hear from you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. And hope everybody's having fun playing video games over there. So that is TCR for the week. That's TCR 377. Thank you very much for listening and for hanging out and for giving me the surprise week off. I did the best I could. But now we'll be able to do some new fun stuff since I have some more space to work here. And before we close for the week, as I like to, I just want to take a second to wish you all the best. Whatever it is you're walking into this past week, don't lose hope. The weather's getting better. Spring is coming. It's hopefully when the sun comes out, we'll all have a better tomorrow. And with that, I'll see you next week.